Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, greetings from the African Child Policy Forum, an independent, not-for-profit, Pan-African institution of policy research and dialogue on the African child based in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. Last October 2014, we organized our 6th International Policy Conference on the African Child under the theme of social protection in Africa, making it work for children. My presentation intends therefore to share the outcomes of that conference and perspective on investing on social protection measures to avoid unnecessary separation of children from their parents. I will first briefly define child-sensitive social protection, then provide an overview of social protection in Africa and their impact, highlight some challenges before concluding and looking at the way forward. So, what constitutes child-sensitive social protection? First and foremost, it should be acknowledged that it is a human right as recognized in the CRC, Article 26. While social protection aims to provide wider economic benefits, it should also address the multiple deprivation of children. Child-sensitive social protection should protect the most vulnerable, create opportunities, and strengthen resilience. It is not only limited to children, but focuses also on families and caregivers. There is not a single model of child-sensitive social protection. There are several interventions, and such as social assistance, social insurance, etc. Now, how do we see social protection in Africa? It has been fully embraced by the African continent, and some of the milestones on the importance of social protection are, first of all, the Livingstone Call for Action. This is the African Union Call for Action dated 2006, which led to a continental social policy framework in 2008. Since then, we've seen an increasing number of countries that have engaged in social protection. Almost every country has at least one social protection program. Many countries in Africa have developed or are developing social protection strategies. And usually, those have been done in response to crises. Have social protection programs have had any? Certainly, yes, but I would just highlight 4 cases. The first one is the overseas cash transfer in Kenya, which increased school enrollment, improved dietary diversity, and reduced child labor. Secondly, the Child Support Grant in South Africa reduced household and child poverty, as well as increased school attendance. In Zambia, the social protection policy rehabilitation of children provided places and safety for children, as well as taking action against sexual and gender-based violence. In Ghana, revenues from fuel taxes have been used to eliminate school fees, expand rural electrification, etc. What are some of the challenges? First of all, they are not accessible. People usually are not informed or not even aware of the existence of the social protection schemes. Secondly, due to lack of data on the most vulnerable groups, children, for example, without appropriate care, are totally excluded. Also, in some instances, child-headed households are not registered as households and therefore are not eligible to benefiting from the social protection schemes. Social protection measures have relatively limited linkages with child protection outcomes, such as prevention of violence, neglect, etc. Most of the programs of social protection place insufficient emphasis on addressing neglect or promoting positive caring practices. When it comes to the design, some of the limitations are that social protection schemes are mostly formal and therefore tend to miss linkage with community-based traditional mechanisms. They are usually focusing on families or targeting families, and therefore are not likely to reach out to children without parental care, for example. Other challenges are that they are donor-funded, externally designed, and based on national macro indicators of poverty. They do not incorporate all types of vulnerable groups, and there are still issues when it comes to scaling up social protection programs in Africa. Despite all those challenges, social protection is promising, and more so in the context of the Sustainable Development Goals soon to be adopted, which put children at the center of sustainability. Social protection can certainly be a means of implementation of the Social Development Goals. However, for this, they should be more sensitive to what children need. There should be deliberate action to include children without care, more focus on working with caregivers is needed. A mix of short-term responses to vulnerability and long-term preventive measures is a must. Greater synergy with community-based indigenous social protection mechanisms and resources are also needed, as well as greater linkages with child protection, community care, and positive parenting outcomes. And finally, there must be adequate resources for geographic coverage, outreach, and follow-up. This ends my presentation. For more information on social protection, please refer to our webpage of the International Policy Conference on the African Child. Thank you very much for your attention.